Hello to everybody out there. Yes, even though I have a gray beard, it is still me, Rabbi Landis, Partners in Torah of Cleveland, Jewcast.com. I'm still here, and we finally have Rabbi Spero back from his trip out west. He's not off the RV. He actually decided to keep the RV parked in his driveway, and he's going to be living in there from now on. He decided he liked the Woodstock thing, and that's just what he's doing from now on. So Rabbi Spero back in Cleveland, but still in the RV. Rabbi
Back,
Spero, how are you? How's it going? What's going on, man?
great, Baruch Hashem. Back from out west. Amazing trip. I don't recommend RVs, but it's a great trip.
Oh, really? You were burnt out on the RV. You know, we got you on like the first or second day, but after a while, it just kind of burnt out after it. You know.
An RV very fast. It's also an RV is made. I decided for when it says an RV is for four people, that means four Gentiles. In other words, four people who don't have this very limited amount of room. No svarim and no talis and tefillin and no kosher food. So then you could fit four Gentiles into the RV, four goyim in the RV, if I could say it like that. But when you have people who each have, Gemaras with them and talis and tefillin, I mean, for me, my father, talis and tefillin, and we bought an Erev. Someone, my uncle was very kind. He dropped us off a bunch of pieces with a base for an Erev. There's the RV, the room is so limited, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just got dressed the first day. I stayed in the same clothes the entire trip. Wasn't enough room for clothing, but it was whenever I think about complaining, now this time of year where we're holding, I try to read certain sadder literature, about different gullies we had. Whenever I complain about traveling, you look back at how these people traveled, how our great grandparents traveled in the old days, and the suffering, and then I can't believe I actually complained about small things like not having enough room in the RV.
Right.
When going out west. What can I
Yeah,
say?
it's like just a few days ago, it was Rashi's yard site, and like we learned Rashi, think Rashi, and it was Rashi's vintner, right? So we think he was sitting there in Troyes, like sipping on his Cabernet Sauvignon and just writing out his commentaries with all the bliss in the world. Dude, he was running from Godfrey to Belion. Like he had crusaders on his tail. He did not have an easy, smooth life, and still he achieved that. The one of the a little bit more recent example from the Achronim is the Shach Sisei Kohanim, that Sisei
Right.
Kohen, the same thing. It was running from the Cossacks to Yamach Shemo, like riding the Shach, and we like have a hard time when the RV doesn't fit our Eruv poles. I'm not making fun of you. It's all of us. It's
Whenever I read stories about especially about the Holocaust, like I read it, I always think I wouldn't have lasted 15 minutes. I would have been the guy who was shot in the first day. I would not have lasted. I don't have the toughness that these
fortitude.
people had. Even like something my father went on a trip out west in 1970. Him, his two brothers, and another friend from yeshiva. And what do you think they ate? Remember, it wasn't like today where you could stop in at any place and get OU bread. And I found in Walmart in Wyoming, they had like OU French baguettes and OU like these. Back then, there was none of that stuff. 1970s,
Matzah and sardines, right?
Sardines, tuna fish, matzah, and salami for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, he said some Shabbos, it's like they stopped at a family in Denver, they stopped at a family in LA, but even still, for basically 6 weeks, that's what they ate. And what could you buy in the road in 1970? You could buy a can of Coke.
Yeah.
Right.
Coke. At least it was Coke back then. Yeah. Look. I'm right now considering modern recent events. I'm going through a history of the Civil War. Excellent book, by the way. If you need a good book on the history of the Civil War, it's totally forgetting the name. Hold on. Let me give it to you here because I want to make sure my book recommendations come out the right way. It is called Battle Cry of Freedom by James M. McPherson. Excellent book on the history of the Civil War.
It's a great book.
Yeah, excellent.
The war guys. I actually read that book.
Yeah, it's considered the authoritative, like every war, everything has their authoritative.
It's very readable.
Very readable, very enjoyable. Enjoyable. It's not like a dark time for American history, but very eye-opening if you've never gone through any history of. Again, it's not that long ago if you think about on the scope of Jewish history. We always my Rebbe, Rabbi Friedman, who we had on the podcast once, would talk about the difference between Jewish history versus American history. So like there's this place near Atlanta called Rock Eagle, Georgia, which is some sort of Native American sculpture made out of rocks. Looks like an eagle, so they call it Rock Eagle. And like the big thing is you go there and you look for arrowheads. And if you find an arrowhead, like maybe this came from like 1750 and that's like old. Whereas when you're in Eretz Yisrael and you find a coin, it's like the whole discussion is, well, was this Bais Rishon or Bais Sheni? Was this Bar Kochba or the Chashmonayim? Like 2,000 plus years ago. And it's just a whole different scope of things. But even so you read about the Civil War in America in the 19th century, and especially where I came from, I'm a Southerner, like you're a Northerner, but you're talking about just a lot of the basic amenities we're very used to. Just, we're not there not that long ago. And if you wanted to eat something, you had to, you had to shacht it and salt it and soak it. And it's like there's a reason why they put Hilchas Melicha on the side of Morton salt, because people used to actually salt their meat before they ate it.
Right.
So we've gotten, and our grandparents, and it's not that long ago. My father still tells me as a kid that, that was back in the day when they called all rabbis reverends. And I think we should bring that back, by the way. I wanted to call, got to bring that back. So there was the reverend would show up with the chickens. Reverend Bornstein was his name, I think. And he would show up with the chickens, and sure enough, they would deliver them like mamish right after shechita. Like the feet were hanging out of the thing he would come in, and my my great grandmother would take the chickens and skin them and feather them or defeather them and salt them and right in the kitchen, because that's what you did back then. And this was 1960, 1950, whatever it was. Like we're so spoiled by the amenities that we have and that we fetch when when Costco is out of chicken or something like that. It's like the end of the world. But we just don't realize how good we have it, and that's why I'm very into, like, I don't really watch much TV, but if I do, I'm very into those post-apocalyptic dystopian society shows, because they kind of wake us up a little bit. That, like if the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted to, he could very quickly like flip this all around, and he's done it before.
You should make a post-apocalyptic dystopian show about a Frum family surviving.
Well. Right?
It would be a quest to go across America, see if they still were any kosher sushi stores left, and if they'd be able to survive without it. It would be a good show.
I wouldn't be surprised if Netflix is working on it, because, like, from my understanding, Netflix is like obsessed with the Jewish people, especially Frum people. There's like a disproportionate amount of Netflix specials about Frum people. So
really?
If not, I'm going to write a letter. I'm going to write a letter that they should do this.
And when I come back from out west, people always ask me, like, "Oh, did you get any anti-Semitic comments?" The only thing people say to me, if they say anything, is I stand with Israel, or they'll say to me Shalom when I walk by. Even when I drove to Miami, I was in South Carolina, Georgia, all these different places. Baruch Hashem. Even though on GLC building where Yeshiva was located, someone has painted a swastika, but
Rabbi Spender, I
really think it's such a minority. I think it's not even a minority. It's a minority of a minority of a minority. I never want to fall into the culture of victimhood, where my whole essence is based on someone painted a swastika. It's probably some 15-year-old kid. I don't know why. I just can't get excited about stuff like this.
Yeah. I was going to say that I was worried that it might be you, Rabbi Spero, just because,
Maybe it was.
It was by the entrance to the yeshiva. I noticed that, So, but thank God, I'm glad we cleared it up that it wasn't you. So.
Sometimes I think it scares me, that we're both somewhat students of history, of Jewish history, of world history. And we always know that when the Jews get too comfortable, it's always bad for the Jews, right? That's the new Con magazine.
Just came today, sells the label on it,
And we always know that it's bad for the Jews.
Yeah.
That's we've said over many times the Maharal that the Metzias of exile is a feeling of discomfort for Klal Yisrael. We're meant to feel discomfort. So I just wonder, America's been very, very great for Klal Yisrael, been very great for the Jewish people. I wonder if I have a whole sheet that I don't know, who knows if it's true or not. The next event I don't think will be a non-Jews against Jews. I don't believe that will happen. I believe it will be an overall cultural battle between religious and non-religious, and I find that frightening. But
Yeah, look, we can like you said, as number one students of history, or as number two students of machshava, which I try to understand at whatever level I can, but still, it's you try and piece it all together. And I mean, number one, we can't piece it together, but number two, it's like that Maharal is very relevant. That the there's a pretty clear blueprint here for the Golos, and it's and we know where we are on that blueprint. Now, the one, I guess, if you want saving grace or possible exception, is that many of the Bali Mechshav, Chaim Volozhiner and others did say that America will be the last stop in Golos. Now, what's that?
Chaim did say that, right?
Right. But the question is, don't miss the point that doesn't mean we got to go through a lot before it wraps up. So it's look.
It's very hard to say. That's I've been learning with the Bachar, and I decided something appropriate to learn in the 3 weeks was I was going to learn Hilchos Karbonos, Hilchos Binyan Beis Hamikdash, like the laws of the sacrificial offering, the laws of the building of the Beis Hamikdash should be rebuilt soon. So it's I don't know, it's interesting. I feel the Chavetz Chaim writes that one of the ways that we can connect ourselves to the Beis Hamikdash, he writes, it's very unclear what the exact order is going to be. Mm-hmm. So Chavetz Chaim said it's very possible, it's not for sure, it could be Tchias HaMesim, will be soon after Mashiach comes, but it might not be so soon. So he said, what's going to happen? We claim we want Mashiach to come, Mashiach will come, and then there's going to be a lot of halachas, right? There's also there's a fundamental disagreement. What will Bayis Shlishi be built? How will it be built? The third Beis Hamikdash. Will it come down like Rashi and Tosfos say in a Binyan Shalish? Will it be like the Rambam says we're going to build it by hand? However we pass it, it's unknown. But there's going to be a lot of halachas that are going to come up impractically, and are we going to know what to do? I'm a Levi, right? So there's actually, I have a brother-in-law who's also a Levi. My wife's a Levi too, so her brother is a Levi. So his shver was also a Levi. They also, two families.
Oh, wow. He's tied up with Levine.
So his shver wrote a sefer called Tyrus HaLevim. Or shver was grandfather, I forget which one, called Tyrus HaLevim, all the obligations of Levim. So I'm a Levi. So I don't know, the Levim, like the Kohanim, there's 24 families. I don't know what family I'm part of, obviously, but I know I'll be called up and I have responsibilities either of singing or of playing certain instruments or of standing guard at the Beis HaMikdash. All these different halachas, right? The Levim will stand in the outer part, obviously, but I don't know them. So if Mashiach comes and all of a sudden they're going to say, and Spero is part of this family, and then I'm going to have to go, and I don't even know any of these things. And I don't know the pratim and the singing. Like I want to do like Hugris Halevi, like the Mishnah says in Yuma. He used to stick his thumb under his tongue and sing very beautifully. I always try to, I don't know what that means, but I would like to learn that secret, how to sing. I have a terrible voice. What's going to happen? I think I'm going to be a guard.
No, you're going to be the harp player or the lyre player, one or the other.
Be the harp, 100%. That I'm ready to do.
Yeah, they even practice.
Not how to play the harp, but I've been learning it with the guys just to familiarize ourselves that there's a whole chelik of the Torah. It's interesting. I was thinking about it. You know how you always see, like, the Baruch Hashem, the proliferation of svarim. We've seen in the last several years, printing is so cheap. You're probably going to see when Mashiach comes, tons of svarim in Hilchas Carbon Chatas, Hilchas Carbon Ayla, Hilchas, you want to be a carbon taida. Everyone's going to bring a carbon taida.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So what are the halachas of the carbon taida? Where it's eaten, how long you have to eat it for, what do you do with the 40 loaves of bread? All these different things that we hopefully, that we decided with the guys, we've learned these things during the 3 weeks to at least put ourselves in some type of practical mode, hopefully getting ready for Mashiach to come.
Beautiful. Yeah. And look, I also, one of the things I started doing during the whole COVID situation, I've talked about this a lot, trying to really focus more on my davening, work on more on my davening. Even as we've gotten back to Tefillah B'Tzibor, I've been getting there early so I could do, the additional things I've added in. But one thing I've started doing is I don't say all the korbanos, but I say some of the korbanos. And even if I don't have time to say them before davening, I say them after davening for the exact reason that you're saying, it's one thing when we try to be Marbas Sedra during Sefer Vayikra, which is, most of us tend to do it so quickly anyways, it's hard to get a deep understanding. But at least for the ones that are part of the Siddur, I try to take the time and say them and think about them. And because, look, it needs to be part of our lives. And the more you talk about it, the more you learn about it, the more you actually want it, the more you realize that we're lacking without this. And that's, and I just finished this series up, You Might Be a Heretic If, on the Yud Gimel Ikrim, which you were very helpful for, recommending the Moshe Spero Sefer. And I also used Weinberg's Zatzal's Torah on it. So, but if you look at the Rambam in the 12th Iker, the Iker of Geula, or the one of the two of Geula, it's a very interesting Iker. And Weinberg makes this point very clear in his Shurim on it, that he says, so the Rambam says clearly that it's not enough to believe that there's going to be a Geula or believe in Mashiach. We have to anticipate it. And again, it's a mistake that we often make, that we think that people read it as you have to anticipate daily. Like, I think Mashiach's going to walk in the door right now. It's not what the Rambam says. Rambam says daily you have to anticipate. In other words, every single day you have to say, this is a Shrekel Chagalus, this is a Shver Galus we have. We need a Geula. We need a Beis Hamikdash. We need Korbanos. And that's that anticipation. Again, if you take the Rambam to his conclusion, the Rambam is essentially saying that if a Jew does not anticipate daily that Mashiach is coming, then his observance of Torah is not observance of the Torah. He doesn't believe in Yiddishkeit. He doesn't practice Yiddishkeit.
I just saw an interesting Maisa about down with the Brisker Rav. The Brisker Rav used to, one of his Talmidim, he heard him, he was always whispering the pasuk, Yishuascha Kivisi Hashem, right, from Parshas Vayechi. And so the Talmud asked the Rav, he said, is there any specific reason why that pasuk? He said, that pasuk, when I say that pasuk, I'm Makayim, the din in the Rambam, of, to be really more than earlier back in the Rambam, the Gemara Masechet Shabbos, Daf Lamed Aleph says, one of the questions the person is asked when he dies is, Tzipisa Yeshua, did you anticipate the redemption? And the Rav said, I say L'Shvasov Kivisi Hashem, I'm Makayim that din in the Gemara. I'm always anticipating, waiting for Mashiach to come. Yeah, it's a hard thing for us, especially, we always said that America is the most comfortable gullus, and it makes it more complex to, I always said the story the last 2 years, I'll say it again, that I've heard from people that in Europe, any shul you walked into on Tisha B'Av, everybody in the shul was sobbing. Mm-hmm. And that is not true of any shul. I've ever been to many shul. I've seen people crying Tisha B'Av. I've never been to a shul where you walked in and everyone was crying throughout the kinnis. Because I think it has to do with the fact that we're so much more comfortable. Right. And it has been a very comfortable gullus, and every Jew should have a karas hatayv to the United States of America, and really any country we live in today. Even the worst country, I guess Iran is the exception, but any other country. Yeah,
by the way, no, go ask Moshe Diamond. Moshe Diamond Shver still lives in Iran. And I asked, and he comes to visit.
But it's very hard, though.
No, I asked the kids about it once. I was talking to, I don't know, Victor, one of the Diamond Boys. I forget which one. One of the Diamond Boys. I said, really? Is that like, he said, he loves it there. I mean, it's like the strangest thing. Like, for whatever, again, I don't want to go.
I think if they want to visit America, though, they have to send a relative to, like, wait in jail till they get back.
Yeah, but again, it's God's promise. He said, like, he loves it there. So, Okay.
But in general, we have it much easier than we had it. So that's a big avoid on Tisha B'Av. Is to someone said to Shimon Schwab, he said, I don't understand you guys. You're all upset on Tisha B'Av. He was flying to Eretz Yisrael for Tisha B'Av. So a Jew on the plane asked him, you guys are so upset about Tisha B'Av. Look what we have. Look at Israel we have. We have a thriving country and a thriving economy, and everything is so good here. What are you crying about? So Shimon Schwab said, imagine you go to a wedding. And a beautiful wedding at a beautiful hotel with a great shmorg. We all know the key to a great wedding is a great shmorg. Mm-hmm. And it's a great shmorg, and everything you could possibly want is there. And you walk in, and people are crying. You say, why are you crying? Look at the food, look at the band, look at everything. And someone says, yeah, the kala didn't show up. So then they give you a whole different spin on the wedding. So without the Shechina and Eretz Yisrael, without the Beis Hamikdash, Eretz Yisrael really is chaser, tremendously chaser. Great as it is, right? Eretz Yisrael is of course great, and when you look all the miles in the Gemara, it's not only when Mashiach is coming that Eretz Yisrael is great. Nonetheless, though, without Mashiach there, it is something that it's like a piece of us is missing. The lashon used by a lot of piyutim, a chelik of us is missing.
Right, exactly. And now that I've again partially inspired by you, I've started my my daily Nach Hazara. Baruch Hashem just finished the life of David HaMelech. In other words, I finished Divrei Yamim up until Shlomo, and now I'm going back to Malachim to pick it up there. But so I'm writing the Sugya Beis Hamikdash. That's a perfect timing because the Sefer Malachim starts off with, and where it pauses into Yomim, that's what's going on. It's really the description and the prelude to the building of the Beis Hamikdash. And again, I say it like this, because obviously I deal with a different clientele generally than you deal with in the yeshiva, but it's very hard to explain even to guys in yeshiva, even to us guys with the yeshiva background, been learning for years, to understand and to look forward to korbanos and Beis Hamikdash and these things. But I just say quite simply, I say just a simple math equation. Take the Chumash, okay? Roughly a quarter of the Chumash is dedicated to korbanos, right? You have all the Sefer Vayikra, you have many mentions in Devarim, you have a few in Bamidbar, like you have a good amount, you have half a Shmos, right? You have like at least a quarter of the Chumash is dedicated to Binyan Beis V'chirat, korbanos, to the whole concept. Take Shas. At least a third of Shas is dedicated to between Seder Tyrus, Seder Kudshim, half a Moed, like at least a third of Shas. What's that?
Zroim is Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah, like at least a third of Shas is dedicated. Not against Zroim, which still for the most part applies nowadays. I'm talking about Tyrus and Kudshim. I'm talking about strictly Beis Hamikdash and korbanos. So you have like a third. You have like a quarter of the Torah of the written Torah. You have a third of the Mishnayos, a third of Shas that's dealing with korbanos. So like whether you relate to it or not, you should at least relate to how much you're missing. That we don't even relate to something that we see is anywhere from a quarter to a third of our religion.
It's a very difficult. It's all of us. We all suffer from it. But I think we have to look at the godless of Klal Yisrael. It's been so many years that we're talking about something. Imagine the world as it existed at the time of Churban by Sheni. Mm-hmm. And imagine that a group of people that were still tenaciously holding on. And that's why any Jews alive today, that means that their family has been through so much and that they're still around today. It's such a great miracle, such a great nace. And the fact that we're still so concerned, that's why I think Tisha B'Av is called a Mayid, Ikri Mayid, the Lashon of Tisha B'Av. If you ever notice, one of the unique things about Tisha B'Av is it's the only fast day where there's no Avinu Malkeinu. Every other is Avinu Malkeinu.
Or Tachanun.
There's no Tachanun. There's no Slicha.
There's no Tachanun, but okay.
Right, very interesting. There's no Slicha said. There's Slicha said on Yom Kippur, on Shas B'Tamuz, on Tainus Esther. All these days have Slichas except for, because it's called a Mayid, and part of the Mayid is the fact that the joyful aspect that we're still here, we're still celebrating Tisha B'Av is it's an unbelievable nace.
It's like I always quote from
Yaakov Emden, right?
Right, and I have it's underlined in the Sefer, right? You can see it right there. I keep it underlined because it's such a beautiful statement where he says that, look, the biggest miracle that's ever happened. He's writing in the 18th century, the biggest miracle that's ever happened, bigger than the Makkos, bigger than Kriyas Yamsuf, bigger than Maimon Har Sinai, bigger than what happened in Beis Hamikdash, is the fact in the 18th century that Klal Yisrael is still here following the Torah. And Kal V'chomer.
And right, through such difficult times, and that's what makes a Jew, like in other words, Rav Sadi kind. Ein umasenu uma el aidei Torah. We're only a nation by virtue of the Torah, so it gives such a special aspect to Tisha B'Av. And it really is. It like Rav Gifter said, it's a maid. It's like we're meeting with Hashem. He might be upset at us, but at the end of the day, it's still a meeting with Hashem. So that's why. It is a mayid. It does have the element of mayid to it.
Right, and then we of course bring in the idea that of the piece of the Yeshua and the fact that it will be turned to days of Salsim V'Simcha when Mashiach does finally come, and we have Binyan Beis Hamikdash. So in my heretic class, I had to decide on a mahalach for the 13th Iker, right? And it's hard because the Rambam himself does not give a mahalach, and at least in the Pirush Mishnayos doesn't say anything. He obviously in Mar Nevuchim he talks about it a little bit, but it's in Pirush Mishnayos he says nothing. And I had to decide on a mahalach on what I was going to teach. But again, it's a hard concept. But what's important in life isn't always easy. Because it's hard doesn't mean we can't.
It's very. But you know what? I really hold it just by showing up in shul, just by trying our best and reading these kinnis. And they have to, to make a Kabbalah, to try to learn more about Karbanas, to try to it's so, for us to have the full essence, it would be like trying, we just talked, I got back from out west. People have said, people ask me, what was the best thing I saw? So I think it's amongst either Yellowstone. I've been there before, but I saw it again, and Yellowstone is just beautiful. Mm-hmm. And the other thing was driving on the PCH, on the Pacific Coast Highway in Northern California, Monterey, and those areas. But if people said, "Tell me what's so good about it," I say it's not so describable. Yeah, you're driving on the cliffs and the side of mountains above the water. It sounds great.
In an RV.
That was not such a great part.
That probably was. It was a little frightening. No.
No. I mean, yes.
I guess it's safe, but yeah.
Not so bad. First of all, it was not one of those. There's two types of RVs. There's the types that are like buses. They're momish buses, right?
Right.
And there's the smaller types, like the Mercedes Sprinters that are outfitted into RVs. We were in a Mercedes Sprinter outfitted into an RV. We've been driving one of those big buses. I don't even know if they could have made it on the side of Pacific Coast Highway. Yeah. But you can't. It's hard to describe with words. It's something you have to see. If a person is like what I compare us to, I like hot dogs. I think everyone likes hot dogs, and most people like hot dogs. Hot dogs are great, right? They don't compare to skirt steak. But let's say a person, their only life, they only had hot dogs. So you want to tell them, I know hot dogs are awesome. You have a hot dog and a good bun with mustard, chopped up onions, a little bit of peanut butter. It's awesome. No, I'm just kidding about the peanut butter part. Hot dogs are awesome. But there's a much better level of meat. There's a rib steak and there's a skirt steak. And I would say, tell me what it's like. What would you tell them? Yeah. How would you describe? It's hard to describe.
Yeah.
It's like a drink. A person goes their whole life and all they have is water or orange juice or lemonade. They never have Coke, right? They're missing out on that true essence of what a cold drink is supposed to really be like. Yeah. So I think that's why we have to look at Karbanos in the Beis Hamikdash, Sahavdil. We don't have if I can, in a certain way, it's even greater that we're anticipating because we don't really understand these things. We don't know what it's like. We don't have. I can imagine, right? Mishaloi Ra, simple space Shveva, Lo Ra, simple Mayama, right? The simple by the simple space of Shveva, which happened on Sukkot every year by the Nisa Ramayim. Whoever never saw that, if you didn't see that simple, you never saw true simple in your life. That means we've never seen true simple in our lives.
Right.
But yet we still tenaciously hold on. We were still clinging. So something very great.
So along these lines, I'll share with you a beautiful idea I saw on the Sifsei Chaim, where he was comparing Chorban Bayis Rishon to Chorban Bayis Sheni, the first destruction to the second destruction. So we all know the party lines that are always said that the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of the Gimel Averos Chamuros, because of Shvichas Dam and Gilui Rayos and Avodah Zarah, because of murder and illicit relationships and idol worship, which I always like to point out. You learn Navi. You learn even Chumash. You go to, let's say, Chet HaEgel, right, the golden calf, and a service reading can make it sound like all of Klal Yisrael participated in it. And then you get sort of the end of the story. You see how many people died because of their involvement in golden calf. 3,000 out of 3 million, right? So it's a 3,000 out of 3 million. Rabbi Spero, do your math. How many is that? What's the percentage? You can pull it out if you want. Right.
1/10 of a percent.
Right. So we have 1/10 of 1% Klal Yisrael who participated in the golden calf. Yet at the beginning of the story, and really not only at the beginning of the story, very much so, all of Klal Yisrael to a certain extent is held responsible, because we have the concept of Klal Yisrael Rebim Zel said that if 1/10 of a percent is doing something that terrible, then it's the responsibility of the other 99.9% to have stopped it. But okay, different shmooths for a different time. But be it as it may, this is what was happening during Bayis Rishon. You had Gilui Rayos, Shvichas Damim, and Avodah Zarah. During Bayis Sheni, it was seen as Chinam. So Sifsei Chaim does a beautiful job of explaining that Bayis Rishon was built on the merit of Schus Avos, that it was the merit of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov that we were able to have a Bayis Rishon. And he goes into a beautiful discussion about Avram is Chesed, and the negative inverse of Chesed is Gilui Rayos, and Yitzchak is Gevura, and the negative inverse of Gevura is Shvichas Damim, and Yaakov is Emes, and the negative inverse of Emes is Avodah Zarah. And so he talks about how each one of those is a perversion of each of the merits that we have from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So needless to say, when you undo the schools, obviously you can't have the Beis Hamikdash anymore. So he says, so too, when you talk about Bayis Sheni, that Bayis Sheni was only there, and Bayis Sheni was very different than Bayis Rishon. There was no Shechina, there was none of the 10 constant miracles. There was no Arna Kodesh. The Arna Kodesh wasn't there because according to my recent Kankan article.
I want to interrupt you for 1 second. The 10 miracles didn't happen every day in Bayis Sheni. A lot of farms said they did.
My understanding is they didn't, show me. Your memory is better than mine. You're more of you're a Rosh Hashiva. I'm just Landis.
I'm a butter maker.
But I think that the 10 constant miracles were only in Bayis Rishon. Again, could be wrong. But the Arna Kodesh wasn't there in Bayis Sheni because, as my recent Kankan article talks about, it might have been Ethiopia. It wasn't. Don't take that. But read the Kankan article to find out more. Again, it's a very different base of Midrash. So how did it survive? It was there on one thing. It was Schus Klal Yisrael. It was the Achdus of Klal Yisrael and the merit of the Achdus of Klal Yisrael that we were able to have a Bayis Sheni. So just like in Bayis Rishon, when the merit runs out or is extinguished, so too it happened in Bayis Sheni. So he says it's not pshat. It was a punishment in either bias, right? It was a reality. That when the lack of Achdus was present, right? When the Achdus went away or Achdus is no longer there, you can't have the base of Mikdash anymore. It's a mathematical equation. You don't the base of Mikdash is only standing because of the Achdus of Klal Yisrael. You don't have Achdus, you don't have a base of Mikdash. End of the story. And that's what he says is pshat in the famous Gemara from Gittin of Kamsa bar Kamsa is that that represents what the situation was like in Klal Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael at that time. And if that's the situation, you can't have a base of Mikdash. And there's always everyone asks the famous question: why is it called the the mice of Kamsa bar Kamsa? Kamsa wasn't involved, right? Kamsa is the one who didn't get the invitation, and Bar Kamsa, the enemy, did. So why are you blaming Kamsa? He didn't even show up. He didn't even know he was invited. So again, he quotes a Maharal, and it's a beautiful pshat that I never saw before. That from Netzach Yisrael, that he says the bottom line is if you had this sort of situation going on. It must have been whatever the Chaverschaft was between the one who had the party and Kamsa was not very positive either. And he said that in those time periods, when you don't have Achdus, friendship isn't friendship. Friendship is excluding. And therefore, in other words, it's cliquey. If you have a friend, it's only to be cliquing to exclude others. That's the whole reason you're doing it. So therefore, part of this exclusion of Bar Kamsa that we read about must have happened because of the relationship with Kamsa. Right? So again,
it's interesting to note. So I think some cipher says, Kamsa and Bar Kamsa are father and son.
Really? That's interesting. I never heard that before.
Makes sense. Like Kamsa and Bar Kamsa.
Which makes it even worse, right?
That the relationships were so skewed that you could have a person, him and his guy hated each other, and he's best friends with his son.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, all the way around. He's best friends.
His best friends with the son, but he hated the father.
He hated the son.
No. Sorry, best friends with the father, but hated the son. Right? Bar comes to the son, right?
But I'll tell you the other interesting thing you could ask on that though is Lamaisa. If you look in the Medrash Rabbah and Eicha, they have the story a little bit differently. They have the story of how did the story end? That the Chachamim were sitting there at the party, and they didn't say anything. And who didn't say anything? It was Chayyim ben Avkulas. In other words, it combines those. It's part of similar to what the Gemara in Gittin says, but a little bit different. So meaning these people, they were not Stukim, right? We know at the end of Bayis Sheni, there were all sorts of sectarians, Stukim, Baitus, many, many different groups going on. These were Prushim. Right. These were people who were
the good guys, so to speak.
I read mitzvahs, and he looked. This person had many Rosh Hashivas at the Chasna, right. And no one said anything. Yeah. I just want to say one idea I saw from Rav Shamfal Hirsch, an unbelievable idea. We've spoken about it before. You spoke about it at Yeshiva a couple years ago. You gave a great speech about Yoshio HaMelech, right? Why the Lashon is both Divrei Hayamim and in the Kinnah. By Kainin Yirmiyo Yoshio, Yirmiyo lamented on Yoshio, and we asked the question, me and you, over the years. What Yoshio was a great person. He was machzir all of Klal Yisrael the tshuva. Right? Klal Yisrael was in a bad time. Again, not everyone's being out of the Zara, but definitely the royal family was. Right. And Ad Kidei Kach that Yoshua HaMelech was the son of Ammon, the grandson of Menashe. He had never seen a Sefer Torah till he was, his machlekes how old he was, his disagreements, and however it was, a teenager, Pashas, never seen a Sefer Torah. And the royal family was isolated. And he was raised mamish as an idolater. And they found one, him and Chilkio. So it's a very tragic ending, but he accomplishes so much. Divrei Yamim, you'll see when we learn Divrei Yamim about him, and it says he made a Pesach like hadn't been seen since the days of Shmuel Navi, meaning better than there was in the days of Shlomo, better than the days of David HaMelech, better than the days of Chizkiah HaMelech. He was Chizkiah's great grandson, better than all those great kings. He made this unbelievable Pesach where all of Klal Yisrael was involved, and it was such a Kiddush Hashem. So why was it such a tragedy, but why do we still remember it? So I saw an unbelievable idea from Sham Shmuel Hirsch. I saw this recently. Rav Hirsch says that it was a tragedy because Yoshio tried to save the state. And he was not successful saving the state, but he saved the nation. He saved Klal Yisrael, and for that reason, we still remember him. I thought it was such a great lashon that beautiful. With all the sadness of Tisha B'Av, we do mourn the loss of the state, the loss of the Beis Hamikdash, but at the same time, I don't want to say we celebrate, but look, it says Tana Dev Eliyahu, it says Mefurish, Kumi Roni Valayla, Malash Ein Lush and Raini Ela Simcha. So we say right in the beginning of Eicha, Kumi Raini Valayla, get up and lament at night. The Tana Dev Eliyahu touches the word, get up and be joyous at night. And I think that's what it means. We're joyous about the fact that the state while the state has not been saved, the nation has been saved of Klal Yisrael. Okay, so I'm alone right now. So the question is, what should we do? So were I near Rabbi Landis, I would put a thumbtack down on his chair, but I can't get over there on time. So we're going to end off, and we're going to thank you for joining us. Follow us on MySpace, where you can get recordings of the 8-track of this edition of the Rabbis Podcast. If you write me a self-addressed stamped envelope, I will send you an 8-track version of it, or a record, if you still have a record player. And Landis not here also. He doesn't like when I say have an easy fast, but since he's not here, I'm going to say it. Have an easy fast. It should go well. This should be, hopefully we won't even have this fast. Mashiach will come before the time this comes in. We'll be redeemed, and we'll be in Eretz Yisrael. Sazam, we'll be in Eretz Yisrael together. Have a wonderful day, and welcome to the guest.
Sorry about that.